is a big thing. Bullying is also equally big. Now we are beginning to become more aware of its impact in our lives
Mhm.
as we get older. So let's dig deeper, a little bit deeper into this act of bullying from
Mhm.
your perspective and some of what the feelings or you went through and the mental health challenges that um, from your perspective often people experience or you experience it. Can we share that backstory, that narrative?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for perspective, for context, I grew up in Oakville, Ontario,
Mhm.
which is a predominantly white town. And I was one of, like, actually, I think I was the only child of color, person of color in those days. By the time I reached high school, it was me and my sister, and I could name all the black people on two hands. But when I was a kid, I was in this school where it was a Montessori school, where
Mm.
we basically were allowed to kind of learn whatever we want at whatever pace that we want. And I was always a child who I wander, I didn't always like to focus on one thing necessarily. And if I did, I was kind of like hyper focused on it. That'll become important later. But when I was a child, I also had to deal with other kids where they didn't understand my skin color, or they treated me different because of it. And I spent decades not understanding this. It's a family name on my dad's side from Antigua. I believe it was my grandfather's middle name and or my grand uncles. Honestly, there's a lot of mystery around this name that I don't fully know yet.
Splice Originals.
Hello, viewers. Welcome back again to the Nana Yayabua podcast. Today, I have with me Ethan Brown. I believe I met Ethan through Ethan's mother, Maureen Brown, whom I've had an interview with.
I
So,
remember when I was younger, I learned my middle name and I was like, what does that mean? Where did that come from? And everyone was kind of like, benefit now because if you look up my name, Otholvin, all you're going to find is stuff that I made. So I chose that name because I knew that I wanted to have something unique for my music. My music is unique, especially my older stuff when I was still figuring out a lot of things. I mean, I'm still figuring out a lot of things, but I wanted something that was unique, but also simple. A lot of people have those kind of one word names that really stick out.
mhm.
Like I don't know, Bruce Springsteen has just his name, and Simon Pegg, the actor, has that. And all people just use their names, but because of the work
Mhm.
that they do, it really brings prominence to that. But I
Yes.
wanted something very unique to me that made me feel like, okay, the only way you're gonna see this music is if you know this name. This is my
Mhm.
name. This is who I am. I am an artist, and I chose that in the days before I really accepted myself as an artist. And it was
Mhm.
kind of you know, it's a long story, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
Yeah.
when I started to share the music that I had been working on, I wanted something that really identified me as this is Atholvin, this is Ethan, this
Mhm.
is my music, and so I chose that name, and it's pretty much followed me since.
Otholvin. Okay. Otholvin. Welcome to the podcast. Let's talk about your beginning story as in growing up. How did it feel like and the different transitions? What you read in school, your first degree?
I think the first book I really remember. Well, I read a few books when I was a kid. I did read a lot. I mean, one of my favorite books when I was a kid was The Warm Place. It was this story about, I think it was a giraffe that was separated from its mother in captivity, and so it was shipped off someplace, and it was trying to make its way home. And it was just a story of this giraffe trying to come home to its mother and its family, and collecting friends along the way that were also trying to get away and escape. And there was this quirk that the giraffe had where if it stood completely still, it would become invisible. And so it used
Mm-hmm.
that throughout the book to kind of like skirt around all the bad guys and everything. And I read that book cover to cover, I don't even know how many times. And then after that, the other book that stood out to me a lot was The Catcher in the Rye. Actually, that one I had to read for grade 9 or 10, I think. Um, and it was just a very striking story for me because it seemed so chaotic, but it was so simple. It was
Mm-hmm.
just this story of this young boy going out on this adventure and trying to wrestle with his aging and becoming an adult and trying to do adult things, but some things he can do, some things he can't do. and he struggles with trying to stop other kids from running off of the edge and becoming adults and experiencing the world as he's experienced it. I really resonated with that story when I was that age, and you know, I don't base my life around that ethos of we shouldn't grow old, but the idea of becoming who we are is something that's really important to me. And Holden was somebody who really didn't want to become someone else. He wanted to be himself. He didn't want things to change. I'm hoping I'm
Mm.
remembering this book properly, but this is what I was taking from this book. It felt like he didn't want anyone else to grow older. He just wanted everything to stop. And at that time, I definitely had some of those thoughts where, I was a kid, I was in high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I didn't see the life beyond high school. And so at that time I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if I could just sit here? But problem is in those days all I was doing was playing video games and watching TV. So, I mean, do I really want to stay there doing that all the time? I mean, I had a very long life after that where I graduated high school and was thrust into this big world, and I had to learn how to do all these things. Like, I went right into university for computer engineering, and I started discovering all these different aspects of life. Parties and girls, and not having to worry about somebody watching you all the time and all this stuff. I was very much caught up in that lifestyle, and I will admit I made some mistakes, some decisions that I wish I hadn't. And unfortunately, because of that, I didn't finish that computer engineering program. But it was a really important lesson for me to go through. And when I finished it, I came back, or sorry, when I left that school, I came back home, and I kind of just I said I just wanted to learn about life. And even back then, that would have been 13 years ago. I thought about music, I thought about art and writing and creativity and all these things. But I think the most important thing that really comes down to anybody doing something that they really want to do, that they're passionate about, it requires a lot of confidence. You have to want it. You have to want to do it. Even if it's something that you don't necessarily like or think you're good at or think you want to do, you have to want to do it for whatever reason. I mean, my father woke up at 4 in the morning to drive through traffic to get to Toronto to work to provide for us kids every day for decades. I know he didn't want to do that, but he had to do that. And so he wanted what came from it enough that he grew and provided and did all the things that he has done for us over the years. And when I was in my 20s, I mean, my 20s, you'll hear the story often from a lot of people. The 20s can often be a wash, and it can be that thing where you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I wash. I think for some of us, the 20s were like, I don't have time. I don't have time.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Look, it's one of two things. You either are scrambling around, what am I doing, or you're laser focused. And for me, I was going through a lot of things that I didn't understand. I had
Mm-hmm.
some things with my mental health and all these things that I didn't realize what was affecting me. Things that happened to me when I was a kid, when I was bullied, all kinds of things that kind of play into who you are as an adult. So I am
Let,
being
let's
dramatic when I say
let's
20s was a
let's talk
wash.
about that. You know what?
Hmm.
Initially, because mental health is a big thing, bullying is also equally big. Now we are beginning to become more aware of its impact in our lives
Hmm.
as we get older. So let's dig deeper, a little bit deeper into this act of bullying from
Hmm.
your perspective and some of what the feelings or you went through and the mental health challenges that um, from your perspective often people experience or you experience it. Can we share that backstory, that narrative?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for context, I grew up in Oakville, Ontario,
Mm-hmm.
which is a predominantly white town. And I was one of, like, actually, I think I was the only person of color in those days. By the time I reached high school, it was me and my sister, and I could name all the black people on two hands. But when I was a kid, I was in this school where it was a Montessori school, where
Mm-hmm.
we basically were allowed to kind of learn whatever we want at whatever pace that we want. And I was always a child who I wander, you know. I didn't always like to focus on one thing necessarily, and if I did, I was kind of like hyper focused on it. That'll become important later. But when I was a child, I also had to deal with other kids where they didn't understand my skin color, or they treated me different because of it. And I spent decades not understanding this because, again, because of the things I deal with mentally and my perspective of the world and how I see the world. When I was a kid, I didn't see it as bullying. I didn't see the tax being put on my chairs, the times that I would try to sit down for lunch with people with kids who I thought were my friends, and they say, "Hey, we actually want to sit with this guy. Can you get up and go?" You know what I mean? Things like that, or leaving me on my own in a lot of cases, or I don't know, pushing and shoving, tackling, all kinds of things. It's hard to remember all the stuff you go through when you're a
Mm-hmm.
kid, but there's names, Oreo comes to mind. That was thrown out quite a bit, and I don't know, things like that. And when you're a child, you don't. I did when I was a child, I didn't understand really what all of that meant. I just thought this is how people are, and so that was my perspective of the world. That's what shaped my perspective for a long, long time, well into recent years, where I thought, well, friends are mean to you. Friends say things and do things that you don't like, and you just have to take it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, they either don't want to be friends with you or they're going to hurt you
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And so that's what I kind of experienced as a child. And so by the time I started to learn about my mental health a few years ago, and I sat with a therapist and talked through the whole thing, it was an incredible experience. And he kind of pointed out, he was like, well, these kids treated you because you're different. And I was like, yeah, I always thought it was weird because I always talked a lot. I was reading. By the time I was in grade, like, what was it, 1 or 2, I was reading at an eighth grade level. And so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand why, when we were having reading circles, all these other kids were reading really slowly and I'm here reading everything. And so I always thought that people treated me differently because maybe I'm weird. I'm just weird. I do weird things. I talk weird. I act weird. I make weird jokes, all these things. And he kind of brought it up. He's like, well, I mean, it's also because you're black. Like, this is a big part of how these kids would have treated you in those days. You didn't have the same experience they did,
Mm-hmm.
and I started thinking about it from that context, and I was like, okay, so like that makes a lot more sense. It's not just the kids who are actively against me; it's the kids that are ostracizing me or don't want to interact with me, because we know kids get all this stuff from their parents, where their parents say things or instruct their
Mm-hmm.
children and say all kinds of things like, "Oh, don't get involved with anyone black because X, Y, Z," and all these things. And so because of all this experience, I kind of developed this personality of kind of staying to myself, and slowly reaching out to other people who I accepted, through that I trusted. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
developed these trust issues around, like, I'm not just going to become close with anybody. I just want people that I know, I can trust. And so that took a really big hit on my development over the next 20 odd years,
Mm-hmm.
until I started figuring this out a few years ago.
Wow. So computer engineering,
Hmm.
halfway.
Yes. So the story doesn't end there, though. um,
Well, I know that storytelling is one
mhm.
of your major
I come
things.
by it honestly. I come by it honestly. You
Yes,
have spoken to my mother.
that is right. That is right. Storytelling. And then you're doing sound,
Hmm. Yeah.
music.
Hmm.
Yes. And I think for the most part, what I got was a lot of self discovery through that
Yes.
process. And it's like I love when we are able to step back and find us,
Hmm.
ourselves, and then
Hmm.
that propel us forward.
Hmm.
So from computer engineering, there was a pause and then
Hmm.
continue.
Yes. Okay. So, so computer engineering, that was when I was 19 until I was 21 or 22. Took a pause, wanted to figure out, what the heck am I doing? I don't want to be here in this program. I don't know what I want to do, even though I love writing. And, I think by 2013, I discovered my guitar. And I was sort of messing around on that. and I was getting these ideas about like, oh, I could definitely become like a musician, da, da, da. But the thing about me is that I'm very pragmatic. I'm very realistic. I don't just do something because I think, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I think about it and I plan it out, and I figure out how it works. Even in those days when I was a little more, not as not who I was now. Um, and so when I finished computer engineering, I was thinking about things, and I was like, okay, what if I were to try to be a musician? All that. Well, what would that involve? Well, I'd have to learn guitar, and I'd have to, learn music, and I'd have to practice, and I'd have to do this. I'm working at Starbucks right now. I have a lot of time, but because of the issues I was dealing with at the time, I was very much held back. Again, unaddressed mental health things that if I had known about those even when I was 20 years old, I would be a much different man than I am today.
Mhm.
So I was a little lost, and I was just working at Starbucks and figuring out this sound that I wanted to figure out. And so I didn't really have any plan or idea of what I actually wanted to do. And so, I was talking to people around me who know me, people who I know I could trust. I was talking to one friend, and he said, well, why don't you become an electrician? Or why don't you go into HVAC? Why don't you go into plumbing and all these things? Because, it's realistic. I don't know what
Mhm.
I want to do. I need to make some money. There's good money in these environments, and I know
Professions,
people
yeah.
that do it. It's a good profession. It's a great profession,
Mhm.
but even still, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I could feel like there was more that I wanted. I just didn't know. So I eventually talked to my mother, talked to my mom, and she kind of helped bounce ideas around for me. And I came to the conclusion, well, I like wiring. I mean, I'm good at wiring. I can wire with my hands and all these things. And maybe instead of doing computer engineering, I should think about electrical engineering. And so I found this program at Mohawk College called this for the Electrical Engineering Technology program. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? I could do this program, and I can get a job, and then I can do my artistic things on the side.
Mhm.
Because at that point I didn't take my artistic things very seriously. I just thought I just want to be able to live and pay for life and be able to afford to go have a dinner and while writing and things like that. So I went to Mohawk and I did the program there, met some incredible people, got a lot of help during the more difficult times from a very good friend of mine, and graduated it. Worked in the industry, worked in the field for about a year. I got a job at a company out in Mississauga. Um, and during that period of time when I was working, I was like, okay, I don't like this job. The pay isn't great. Like what I was getting paid for that job
Mhm.
is less than what I was getting paid for working at Starbucks, which I was doing recently as a shift supervisor. For context, it's wild. It's wild. Um, so I looked into my options, and I saw that McMaster had a joint program with Mohawk where they said if you finish Mohawk with a certain grade, you can do one of our programs, or Bachelor of Technology program.
Mhm.
And so I applied for it, I got in, and I decided to go the software engineering route. And so I started studying software engineering technology at McMaster. I did it for I think 3 years, 3 or 4 years. Um, and during this time was the pandemic, which
Mhm.
that was really where a lot of things changed for me, as it changed for all of us. It
Yes.
was a heck of a time. We all went through that period where we cut our hair, learned to be a DJ, and all kinds of things, right?
Oh, you
Um,
did DJing too?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
DJing wasn't
okay.
me, but I did do producing. I did do producing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it all kind of came together where
Mhm.
I got a co-op, an internship with a bank, one of the top four banks of the country, as a quality assurance analyst. And it's funny because I had a mentor who I was talking to at the time, and I said, "Hey, I got this offer for this quality assurance job," and she's like, "Do not take that job because it is really boring and you're gonna hate it, and do not take that job." But again, because I hadn't discovered myself yet, I thought, well, it's not that bad. It's great pay, more than my last two jobs combined. It's work from home. I don't have to go out and do anything and meet people. At this time, I thought that I didn't like meeting people and that I didn't like going out. Boy, was that a discovery when I found the opposite. Um, but I said, you know what, this is great. And so during this period of time, I was also working on my novel. I was writing a bunch of short stories because I wanted to do a compendium and then eventually a podcast of short stories. I was doing 3 classes at McMaster during the first semester of 2022, and I was putting together a plan to buy my first condo. So I had a lot going on. I had a
Good
lot going
plans, good, great
on.
plans,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Even though you say you were confused and you were going through all these, it's like there
Mhm.
were all strategic plans put in place. It was just a matter of, okay, which one comes first and which one, but they were all great plans. They were all great
Right,
plans.
right.
They were heading
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not the kind of guy where I just do nothing. Like, even when I didn't know
Mhm.
what I was doing, I still planned something. I knew I didn't really have it all in for software engineering and for working as a quality assurance analyst, but I had plans around it. And it's because I had that job as a quality assurance analyst that I can thank for having the life that I have now, because it gave me stability, it gave me benefits, it gave me time off when I needed to take a step back and when I needed to heal and all these things, and it gave me the funds that I needed after all these things to kind of live my life a little bit. I could invest in myself for my podcast. I could invest in
Mhm.
myself for buying musical equipment and
Mhm.
technology, and I could invest in myself for having the stability to go out and socialize, because I was a very, like I said, I was a very closed person. The most I had done before that was I had my one group of friends where we would go out maybe once or twice a month. We'd go for
Mhm.
dinner, we'd play board games at someone's house, stuff like that. And, by the time I had this job and by the time I kind of went through my more difficult period of time during that from 2022 to 2023 ish, um, I had to rebuild myself. I had to restart because I suddenly realized that everything I knew about myself was wrong. My
Mhm.
motivations, my desires, my ambitions, my everything was not what I thought it was. I put myself in this box A, and I said, okay, you go to school, you get a job, you pay for your life, and you do your hobbies. Right? That was my whole
Yes.
life there. And then by the time I realized, holy crap, wait a minute, I can do a lot more than I think I can do right now. Like, I don't have to just wake up for this 9 to 5. I don't have to hide the fact that I'm making this music. I don't have to talk around
Mm.
myself and my interests. It was a big discovery for me. And so by the time I discovered that, that's what kicked into action my next plan, which was,
Mhm.
okay, I know I can't stay at this job. I just can't. And I pushed and I pushed.
Mhm.
There was periods where I was going to quit before I really should have. And people in my life were like, "Whoa, let's take the reins back a little. Like, hang
Calm
on,
down.
you calm down. Like, I know you have to go, but like, you don't just want to go into nothing."
Yes.
And so that was when in 2023 I discovered a school called Metalworks, which is a school I'm
Metal
going to.
works.
Metalworks, yes, yes, it's the school I'm going to now. It's also a music studio. Um, they've
Okay.
had they've had what's his name, Bruce Springsteen there, Christina Aguilera, The
Mhm.
Weekend. I don't know if he was from there, but some of the faculty are connected to The Weekend there. It's a
Mhm.
very prominent school. And so 2023, when I was in the height of like basically what I was focusing on like one thing at a time, where I was like, okay, I have the job. Let me focus on meeting people and being able to talk to people and being able to express to people. So
Mm.
I joined like a couple of singles groups. I started going out into my local
No,
area
no,
to the.
your mom's church singles group. I,
No, 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 no.
I, I just
Definitely.
I just had to add that. Maureen is going to
No.
kill us.
I know. I have to make sure I skip over this part when I tell her about it later.
And
Oh
she'll get to
no.
watch it and listen, and it's like,
Oh
really,
Lord, I'm not
Ethan?
going to hear the end of it. I'm not going to hear the end of it. She's going to be like, "You had to tell them that? You had to say that? Really?"
But that is the beauty of life and having these conversations, because it's the reality. It is your reality, your lived experience. And by chance, whoever that is listening to this conversation in any part of this beautiful universe that we are living in right now will find comfort and, a kinship in understanding that they are not alone in this journey. So,
Absolutely.
Mama Maureen, you just have to allow us to be.
I mean, look, that was one of the things that I had to kind of discover for myself, which was what do
Mm-hmm.
I want to do without any outside anything? I thank my mother for all the support she's given me over the years, all the help, especially because,
Mm-hmm.
look, I mean, when you're young, eh, I hate to say it this way because I was young and I remember feeling this way, but when you're young, you really don't know what's going on. Like you said earlier, some people it's like they figure it out, they're just laser focused and they're like, I'm gonna do this and work and then you know what I mean? And that's great. But there's also people who they just kind of are like, I don't know what to
I
do,
don't know.
and I was thankful to have my mom as a very big influence on me where like, yeah, she wasn't exactly influencing me towards, hey, I see you playing guitar all the time or see you writing all the time. Why don't you do this? She never tried to push me in any direction, right? It was more her point of view was she wanted me to be happy and safe and settled, which I agreed with. And so I developed that pragmatism over the decades that I grew up, where I knew that okay, I want to do this, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to just jump without being prepared, right? I
Mm-hmm.
want to be a musician, I want to be an artist, but I know that I have to do this first. And that was my experience with engineering and with being a quality assurance analyst because I didn't have any love for that world. The only love I had for technology was that I wanted to build a computer so that I could play video games, and I for the record, I did tell my mom about this, so I'm not in trouble for saying this. But I used to always ask for like computer parts and things like this
Yes.
because everyone in my life always thought, oh, he loves computers, he wants to build computers. But I was like, no, I want to play video games, you know. Um, but anyway, so at this point, I had to really discover what I really want for my life, and I realized what I wanted was to have a very big group of friends. For one thing, I wanted to have a large circle of people. I think I remember saying, what I want is to be able to just go places and be known. I don't want to go and be by myself. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-hmm.
want to be by myself in the sense of like I'm going and exploring, but I don't want to just go someplace and I want to feel comfortable. So I would do
Mm-hmm.
things like go to different bars and places that I would just scout. I would
Mm-hmm.
just sit at the bar and write because that's what I did during the pandemic. That's what I did during some of my harder days. Is how I got through things. I would go to bars and I would write. And so when this new age came for me, I had to discover other people. And so I joined a couple of singles group. There's a pretty big one in Toronto that was from Reddit. And I started going to events and just getting to know people and just trying to see who am I when I'm around people. And it
Mm-hmm.
was always surprising for me every time I met people because it's like I had to discover someone new. You know what I mean? I had to discover a new part of myself. I realized that who I was before, I was trying to be somebody for somebody else all the
Mm-hmm.
time, and then through that period I cut out certain elements of my life like drinking and all things like that i just I wanted to be alive without it. You know what I mean? I wanted to see who I could be without it because I would
Mm-hmm.
always notice that I would take a sip of alcohol or I'd have one drink and it's like I know I'm acting different. I'm not being bad or
Mm-hmm.
anything, but I just know I'm acting different and I didn't like that. I wanted to discover
Mm-hmm.
who am I if I have nothing. I even cut out caffeine, which was not easy, let me tell you that.
It's not. I
Oh Lord.
I I I think I cut out caffeine somehow.
Hmm.
No, because for me personally, doing intermittent fasting here and there,
Yes. Yes.
automatically that means, and when I'm
Yeah.
breaking a fast, I am not starting with caffeine. I need some
Yes.
protein and whatnot. So inadvertently, it just cut it out. And
Which
I do
happens.
warm
Yeah.
water and apple cider vinegar to make me feel good. So
Yeah.
so when people say caffeine is hard, or maybe I've not paid attention because I used to drink coffee.
Well, for context, I did used to work at Starbucks where I got coffee for free. so, so I drank quite a bit of coffee for a while. I didn't actually drink caffeine or coffee at all until I started working at Starbucks.
Mm,
Because they make you do this coffee tasting and you get like a pound of coffee for free every week and you can get free drinks while you're working. So when I first started working for Starbucks in like 2012, I was getting like 8 shots of espresso in a day, like every break on my way out the door. I was drinking a lot of coffee. And I was on and off with it for a while, but then during this period of time, I basically just said, you know what, like I learned more about my mental health. I learned about certain things that I was dealing with, including
mhm,
I only learned about this one recently, but I knew I was dealing with something at the time, which was like ADHD, which can have a lot of connection to things like this, right? Caffeine has a very big connection. I have a very high sensitivity to the caffeine. And
Mm-hmm.
so around that time, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to cut it out because it makes me anxious. It makes me jittery. At least drinking coffee. Eventually, I did just settle for drinking black tea, one tea in the morning. Now I have maybe like one to get through if I'm opening the store. But anyway, so, I had to learn a lot about who I was in order to talk to people at these groups
Mm-hmm.
and everything because I realized I I don't know I don't know who I am, and I'd get really anxious and like you might be able to ask my mom, or I don't know if you talked about it, but like there was a period of time where every time I came home from some event, whether I was at an open mic or a karaoke night or just a bar night or things, and I'm talking to people, I'd come home talking about how I completely embarrassed myself and the world was ending and everyone hates me. And I said this or that when I meant to say this or that, and no one's going to like me, and da 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 da. I would go off and off and off. That's, I discovered that I also have anxiety, which, that's something I deal with, which
Also,
is a
you had
big
no
part of it.
idea that was anxiety.
For decades, I did not know. For decades, I did not know, right? All the issues I had with studying when it came to ADHD and anxiety when it came to socialization and other people. It was a lot. I could go on and on and on and about that. But
Mm.
anyway, the point is that I spent about a year and a half from 2023 up until 2024. I realized I loved being out and about. I wasn't afraid of it. I mean, before the only time I would leave the house was to go to the grocery store, maybe. But other than that, I would spend days, sometimes weeks, without leaving my house. It was, it was really, really bad, and I
Wow.
didn't realize how bad it was because I thought that's who I was. I thought I used to joke with my friends during the pandemic. I'm like, this is great. Now I have no reason to leave the house. Da da da. I'm thinking to myself, why do I feel horrible right now? And so as I started to learn these socialization techniques and talking, I started discovering that like the world is a really big place and there's a lot of people out
Yeah. So what kind of techniques did you learn just in case that there are people listening that, are also going through the same thing and they can learn a technique or two that you've
there.
learned as well?
So the biggest thing I learned was become a regular. And it's not that difficult, but it takes commitment. Because basically what I did was that there's like a couple of bars in Burlington here that I would go to that I would just show up. When I would go to places and things that I wanted to do, right? For other people it can be like going playing football or soccer, pickup soccer, hockey,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of sporting event or whatever, or writing circles, painting nights, trivia nights. There's all kinds of events and stuff that are happening everywhere in Burlington and Hamilton, Toronto, even the
Mm-hmm.
small towns like Brant and Brantford and all these places. They all have these things going on. And the one thing that I learned the most was become a regular. All you have to do is show up and people will start to gather, right? You don't necessarily have to make it like when I first started. I was joking about this with my karaoke friends recently because I was talking about how when I first started going to those nights and my open mic friends as well, I didn't talk to anybody. I would not talk to anybody. I would go up, I would do my song, my karaoke or my open mic, and then I would come down and I would either hang out by myself for a little bit and then I would leave or whatever. Sometimes people would come up and try to talk to me. I remember karaoke, the most significant thing was there was a regular group that would go to that karaoke night because they would follow the karaoke guy. And I would go there every whatever day of the week it was, almost every day of the week it was. And I would just hang out and just kind of smile and nod and like maybe talk a little bit here and there as I started to get more comfortable. But I didn't feel comfortable being friends with them until finally one of them said, "Hey, do you want to come sit with us?" And I was like, "Sure. Are you sure you want me to come sit with you?" you know? I mean, the image you have in your head is different from reality. I thought in my head that I was the biggest loser, that I was super weird and super awkward, and everybody hated me and nobody wanted to get to know me. But it turns out people were just kind of like, "Hey, man, like you kind of been coming here for a while. Why don't you come hang out with us?" And now they are some of my like closest friends. They're really really
Yeah.
good friends. I see them regularly. Same with my open mic. People would come up to me and talk, and then I'd say a few words, and then they would leave me alone because they respected my boundaries. Then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I started being able to actually talk to people and be around people and grow with people. Now, I'm not saying that I have everyone is my bestest friend in the world and we're, helping each other move and all of this stuff. A lot of these things take a lot of time. It's only been like a year and a half for me, maybe 2 years that I've been doing this. A lot of the friendships that I saw develop in those groups have been going for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. It takes time to really develop a true friendship, which is why, for me, what's important isn't trying to force a friendship with people. You know what I mean? And also being careful about who is around me. It's about seeing who I gather with naturally. Because again, it's about commitment and being regular and being a person amongst people. The longer you are a person amongst people, the more you will find other people, and then people start to come to you, right? So
You know,
that's the biggest thing for me.
as you giving me all this backstory and who you are, the reason why I'm smiling is that it's like the way we hit it off when you came to fix your mom's computer, and we started having a little chat, which almost
Yeah,
became a long chat, which we had to pause on it because you were busy, and we had to have this. So sometimes it's difficult to see the challenges that people are dealing with until they tell their story of, what, it took me a while before I got this comfortable, say, even
yeah,
having such conversations and everything. So
yeah.
let's talk about the tutorial. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And now, I am not a music expert, so
Mhm.
you're going to tell me about tutorial, and I know it's sort of one of your sonic experiments, and
Yeah.
it's like what the personal statement with it, and
Mhm.
what's the story behind that project?
So the tutorial is a very significant project for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I uh, spent a long time working at a bank, working as a QA analyst, and kind of working on my hobbies on the side. During the pandemic, I discovered FL Studio, which is this program for beat creation, for mixing and making music and producing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and during that time that I was at the bank, I spent a lot of time just throwing things at a wall. Like I wasn't even thinking about what I was trying to make. I wasn't trying to do anything. I had been writing for years, for decades. And so I just wanted something that I could put my written work to,
Mm-hmm.
because all the music I made to that point was just me improvising music on a guitar. A lot of the songs on my almost all the songs on my music channels, they're all improvised music. Hard Time of Year, Brain Maybe, Brain Maybe Washed, Scientific Paper. I don't know. A lot of those ones are improvised songs where I just picked up my guitar and I had a pedal with a beat maker and I just made something up on the spot. Scientific Paper
Mm-hmm.
is my favorite one of that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Or These Notes Don't Make Sense. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so during the pandemic, I was working on these songs where I was actually creating my own beats, and I was started to actually record things that I had written, while also doing improvisation as well. But as I started to grow and went through my change and everything, I realized, okay, I can't keep doing improvised music because I had been doing open mics weekly for like 2 or 3 years at that point, and it was great, but it was also bad because it's like, yeah, I'm having fun and I'm making up songs, but like sometimes the songs are good, sometimes they're not. They're not good,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. People would tell me things like, "Hey, I've never heard you made a bad song," or like, "All these songs are pretty good." I'm like, okay, but again, if I go play at the Rogers Stadium, I can't sit there in front of an audience of 50,000 people and just make up a song on the spot, not for my whole set at least,
Mm.
right? I need to do more. I need to do more. I've reached a wall creatively where I realize I can't do anything past this. And so I had all these lyrics that I had written, and I'm like, I need to actually memorize my songs and make songs that I can repeat, that I can sing over and over again if I ever get a gig anywhere. And so that led to last November, I think it was November or December, where I started kind of put together this project where I was like, okay, what's the best way to learn how to like practice lyrics and practice making music?
Mm-hmm.
And what I figured out was rapping, hip hop. I had never done hip hop or rap or anything. I don't listen to hip
Mm-hmm.
hop or rap. I don't do anything with it. I hadn't done anything with it to that point. And I realized, okay, this is a style of music where it's poetry, I am writing
Yes.
poetry. So I have these
Yes.
whole lines, these stanzas. I read through them over the microphone, and I do it to a beat, and then I put some guitar over it or bass or whatever. And so I started practicing with that. And so that was this first little foray I had into that at the beginning of January. It's a little project I did for TikTok, which was basically like 7 songs that were like a minute and 15 seconds, minute and a half
Mhm.
each. That was just me putting together random beats, like simple, basic mixing and editing, not
Mhm.
even really editing, but basic, simple mixing. And I'm going to do my lyrics on top of that. And it was
Yeah.
cruel because, I got like not a small amount of numbers for me at least. I got like 700, 600 views,
Mhm.
small overall, but still a significant amount. And so I finished that project and I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Well, okay, let me just work on a bunch of songs because that's usually what I would do by that point. I would just work on like parts of a bunch of songs, make like 13,
Mhm.
15 recordings, and then pick ones that I like the best and then trim them down and whatever. And so by, I think it was, I don't even know when it would have been, like February or March, I started realizing that I was working on a very significant project. Um, and I had all these songs kind of coming together. And I kind of realized, okay, I have 8 hours a day that I am working at the bank, and things aren't going well because last year during the bank, they had the bank I was with had just did a big merger, and
Mhm.
so there was no projects available because all the money had dried up. And so I spent last year doing not as much as I thought I would be. I remember going to my manager being like, "Hey man, I don't think I'm doing anything right." And he's like, "No, you're fine. Like you're doing a great job. We just don't have a lot to go around right now." And I'm like, "Okay, if this that I'm doing right now is me doing a fine job, is doing all right, I don't want this."
Mhm.
And that kind of started to influence a lot of the things I was doing. So by the time earlier this year rolled around, I got a new project where I did have a lot to do, and I was very busy. And I was trying to balance working on my work while also working on my music, while also trying to live my social life and do all these things. And I was like, okay, something's got to give. Something's got to give because I don't know what I'm doing right now. Now, sorry for a little bit of context as well. In 2023, I actually, when I looked into Metalworks, I started an application for the program, but I didn't finish it because I didn't feel like I was there yet. I didn't feel like I was ready. I
Mm.
didn't know enough. I couldn't do much. So I let it sit. So fast forward to earlier this year, around March or April, and pressure's coming down at work, and I'm realizing I do not want to do this job. Like it's getting harder and harder and harder to do this job. Things are slipping through the cracks. People are asking me what I'm doing. People are pointing out mistakes and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is going to end one of two ways. I'm either going to get fired or I'm going to have to quit. And again, I consulted with the people in my life. I talked to people in the various positions and about like, okay, what should I do? Some people said, don't quit your job. Some people said, quit your job. Some people said, whatever, just don't get fired. Right. And so I summed it all up and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to quit. Because if I get fired, I don't want that stain on my record. I don't want to know that I just purposefully got fired. That doesn't sit right with me. I'm not that kind of person. It just doesn't work for
Mm.
me. And so I quit my job. And for about a day or two, I was kind of like, okay, what next? you know? Um, but thankfully, I remembered that I had started this plan with Metalworks like a year before. And I realized, wait a minute, wasn't I like doing an application or something? Like, oh yeah, wasn't I like planning to become a musician and like work as an artist and all this stuff? Wasn't that a thing? So, I went to the school website and I filled out the application. They had all these questions you had to ask. And eventually I got in. And apparently it's pretty hard to get in the program, which I didn't know, but I got in. And so this this kickstarted the project, the tutorial, because basically what I
Okay.
said was, okay, I have to start school full time in September. I am now in March or April, I think, at this point. I
Mhm.
want to create something that is the sum of my skills that I have done on my own. Everything that
Mhm.
I've done on my own, everything that is self taught, I want this to sum up in this project. And so I worked really hard for the however the many months it was up until June or July on this project. And I decided to call it the tutorial because I'm not sure if you know anything about video games.
Not really. My
I'll keep
son
it
will
quick.
know.
She'll know. I'll keep it quick because I don't want to make it a whole story too. But
Yes.
basically, in video games, there's the main part of the game classically, and then there's the beginning part, the tutorial, where you learn the skills that you need to learn in order
Mm.
to play the main game. And so that's what this EP was. It's a project that was everything I had done before I released that EP. Everything I'd done before that project was me being in the tutorial. It was the end
Mm-hmm.
of my self-taught era. Once
Mm-hmm.
that tutorial was done, now I'm going into school where I'm learning how to do things properly. I'm learning how to actually work in the industry and be a real musician. And so anything I do is no longer just self-taught, right? Now it's I've been
Mm-hmm.
educated in this. Now I'm learning how to do this. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I decided to call it the tutorial, and that's the significance
Excellent.
behind it.
What about the liar's tales?
The Liar's Tales, yes. Okay, so that was my podcast that I
Yes.
was also running this year from
Pause.
last year. It's technically done. I do have to release the last episode, but I got really busy and I haven't had time to edit it and put it together. I'm going to do it at some point. Maybe wanted to leave it as an open ending a little bit for now, but um, the Liar Musician is a
Mm-hmm.
collection of my short stories, and it's based
Yes.
around this one particular short story I wrote called The Liar Musician,
Mm-hmm.
which I wrote and I was posting on my website for a while, but it's really hard to get traction for a website. It doesn't get as much attention. And I was getting kind of disheartened, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with this. So at one point I created an album called The Liar Musician as well, and I'm like, okay, so it's this musician. He tells tales. He tells songs. Wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, I have tales. I have stories. I have dozens of short stories that I've written that I want to share with people that I want to do
Mm-hmm.
something with. Why don't I have The Liar Musician tell those stories? So I've been messing around with podcasting for a couple of years before that, just kind of dipping my toes, figuring out how to set up the technology and do the recordings and do the editing and everything. And
If I
I
can
started
do
and
it, you
restarted
can
it a
do it.
few times. I know it's once you get the hang of it, it's really not that bad. It's really not that bad.
Yes.
So yeah, so I spent the last year while I was working on all these other things. I had most of the short stories written already. I have it all had it all
Mm-hmm.
planned out. I brought in a couple of friends who did the voice work for one of the narrators, because my whole thing is that the live musician changes his voice to mess with people. It's part of his whole mythos. And so yeah, it just kind of came together where it's now at 11 episodes, I want to say, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And each story just represents something that I came up with when I was in a different mood or state or place or creatively wise or anything. And I just wanted to tell stories. I just wanted to tell cool stories, and it's interspersed with the live musician Tale himself, and
Well,
you
your
know,
mom said you were a fine storyteller, and I could see that the apple did not fall too far from the tree. And I believe you are a storyteller at heart. It's at some point they will all merge together, or they are slowly merging together as you find
yes.
yourself. So let's look into this, that you've described your evolution from sound engineering and yeah,
From electro
into
engineering.
from electrical engineering into music. The storytelling is basic. So looking ahead, what does success mean to you now with all the experiences you've gone through and also the self-reflection you've done over and over? Is there an end goal, or is this journey it's the journey in itself?
Well, to be honest, I want to win a Grammy.
Ah, that's I'll hold you to it.
Please do. Yeah. Yeah. Success for me looks like building a cozy little life for myself, to be honest. That's what I want. I don't want to necessarily build a life of fast cars and big parties and, jet setting and all
Listen,
this
I
stuff.
like myself a Porsche, a Lamborghini, a
Sure.
Maserati, or a Rolls Royce, or a Maybach. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. My favorite car is a 1969 Dodge Charger RT. Like if I can get that car before I go, like that will be the absolute goal. But no, honestly, I want to build myself a cozy little life where I can have my space, I can have my elements, and I can work on my music and my writing. Honestly, I've taken a bit of pause on my writing right now because I'm focusing on music, and I want to be able to work on all of these things. I want to get into acting too, but that's more of a stretch one because, acting
No,
is a
I
whole
don't
other
think so.
It's a very whole other world. But no, I want to be able to live the kind of life where I can kind of do what I'm doing now, but in a different way. You know, have my studio and have my living room and have the bar that I go to and have the events that I go to where I can just casually say, you know what, I feel like going out today. You know what I did last night? I went dancing last night, you know?
That's
I went
great.
dancing. I just had done a big test at school. I had finished working on a couple of songs, and I had done a shift at Starbucks, my job, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, I don't want to go home. I'm feeling jazzed because the thing about it is that when you develop yourself to the point where you're keeping yourself generally doing things and generally busy, that momentum doesn't really stop, which is a bad thing sometimes because it means, hey, maybe it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm going to work on a song for the next 4 hours, you
No, it's
know,
a
but
good thing.
it's a good thing. Trust me, it's a good thing. But I got to that point and I'm like,
Hmm.
I want to do something just fun. I just want to go out and have fun.
Yeah.
You know, all my friends are either in Toronto or Burlington, Hampton, or they've got kids, or they don't do last minute things and this and that. I'm by myself. I don't want to just go home and sit by myself. And so I
Hmm.
did. I found a place downtown Hamilton where I just went and danced. You know, I
Hmm.
got a non-alcoholic beer, went on the dance floor, and I danced for an hour. I didn't even realize it had been an hour until later. And then I went into a
It
karaoke
was an
place.
exercise.
It was an exercise, and that's what I'm talking about. I want to live the kind of life where
Yeah.
I can just get up and do these things, or if I want, I can sit on that couch over there and
Hmm.
fire up my video games, put on, my TV show, and
Yes.
just hang out. You know, that's
That's
what I
it.
want.
Last night after work for 4 o'clock, whatever, I went to an art show, the Black Art Fair, on
Nice.
yeah, and met so many beautiful Black Canadian
Nice.
artists showcasing their work, and it was a beautiful, you know, soul enriching experience,
Right.
meeting like-minded people, being in a beautiful space. It's so that's why I say it's a good thing, because I could have made a decision to just come back home, but I made that decision to be amongst and see and feel and connect, and
Yeah.
sometimes reconnect with people I have met in, say, Belleville, a
Yeah.
different space. So
Yeah.
it was great. It was great.
I
So
agree. I agree.
let's look at this as we winding up this conversation. What keeps you coming back even when it is difficult?
Mm.
As soon as I get there, that means
Ugh.
the story, the question hits. It hits.
Well, you know what? I tell you what it is. Now, there's some people that they get motivated by what they want, and there's some
Mhm.
people that get motivated by what they don't want. What I get motivated by is what I have, honestly,
Mm,
because I saw what I had before. I saw what I was going through and the things that I dealt with and how hard it was to deal with that. And I saw what I wanted when I was in those days. And I saw what I wanted when I thought all I want to do is just this one thing. You know what I mean? What I've realized keeps me going right now is that I have a real life now. And it's
mm,
not even, I wouldn't even consider myself at the beginning right now. I'm still discovering so much about myself, so much about the world around me, so much about what I can do. You know, I'm opening up to dating again. you know, I
from
just
your lips to God's ears.
I just discovered that what keeps me going is knowing that like I have worked so hard, so incredibly hard just to get to where I am now. And
Mm,
I can take those moments where if it gets really hard and I know it gets hard, I know it's honestly, I wouldn't even say things have been worse for me in some cases. A lot of things are going for me right now that it's like this is really hard to deal with. But because of how I've worked on myself and how I perceive the world and how I deal with things, it doesn't seem as like, okay, well everything's ending. Now it's like, okay, well, I have to deal with this now and move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And you know what? I've been doing a lot of stuff lately. So I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna go dancing. or I'm going to
Mhm.
go to karaoke, or I'm going to go visit my friend and bring them a gift for their new baby. And all
Mhm.
these things that makes me think like, how did I not do this stuff before? And so
Mhm.
I take advantage of what I have gained now and what I have now. And my desires for what I want in the future is always changing now. I don't want anything in the future because who knows what I'm going to want a week from now. I wanted one thing when I came into this school program and I said that's what I'm going to go for. And after learning and discovering and talking to the professors and the people at the school, I've learned, okay, well, maybe that's not what I want. Maybe I want something else. Or maybe I can focus on what I'm doing and working on things and allowing things to come from me and going for things that I see make sense. And then who knows what my goals will become. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I want a Grammy, of course. I want a cozy life, of course. I want somebody special in my life. And I want to be able to live without having to worry about a lot of things. But none of that's necessarily going to happen anytime soon. So if I go through a hard day where I get a bad mark on a test or something happens, then I'm dealing with that right now. And it feels a lot better than what I was doing before.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot. Viewers, listeners, you have been listening to Ethan Brown on the Nanaya Yabua podcast. Ethan, it's been inspiring hearing about your journey, and it's still ongoing, from and you doing the tutorial, the lion tales. I'll say do not stop because I started listening to the lion tales. If you know, yeah, I was listening to some. Anyways, it's a beautiful self expression. You have so much in you, and this story of self discovery is amazing. Where can viewers and listeners find you?
So you can find me under Otholvin on Instagram and TikTok, and I think on YouTube. I have my link tree on my Instagram. It's
Hmm.
got my links to all of the recent works that I have done.
Hmm.
Um, hopefully it's not too difficult to get into. A lot of it can be, you know, I'm an artist. I can't say what you might or might not get from it, but I don't know. I hope you enjoy it for what it is,
Take
because that's all the
take a
beginning
look
stuff.
at it, experience it for yourself, and he's single and open and ready and available. And any of those words applying. Ethan, thank you so much. It has been a blast.
Thank you, Nana, and I'm glad you brought me on this show. It's been a great time.
I'm glad you said yes. I'm glad you came on the show. Viewers, if you listen to the Nana Yaya Boa podcast and you have not subscribed, please do subscribe. Wherever you listen to us, please follow us either on Spotify, on Apple Music, Amazon Podcast, etc. Wherever you listen to your podcast, we are there. So please do subscribe and follow and share with your friends, family. Somebody may take or listen or learn something from it. Thank you.